4 years ago, the city of Salinas embarked on taking care of the homeless by having a warming shelter. We had very little support from anyone. We stepped up and we spent the money. Took it out of our general fund, took it away from programs for youth, took it away from programs to build affordable housing, and we did what we had to do. We have spent $120,000 a year this year on the warming shelter. We also spent $250,000 opening up a service center. And I want to applaud Monterey County for wanting to come forward and open a year-round warming shelter, because I understand that's the goal. And they may have a building. I'm hoping that they can activate their large base of employees and their billion-dollar budget, and they could open one in 7 days. I also have 614 businesses in the downtown area that have been our partners for 4 years, that have put up with whatever we've done. They had opportunities to unelect me and to go against me as I was opening a warming shelter in their part of town. But they have been very supportive. They have been very good business partners for the city and for Tampsey, because they all supported Measure X, something that will build the roads. So as I look at this, I think it's time we moved forward, and we need to do the proper thing. The county needs to open a shelter year-round. They need to take this issue on. They receive the service money. And we want to applaud them for being willing to take this on. I don't know how much longer we can afford to do this.
Good morning, Tampsey board members. My name is Paul Farmer. I'm the CEO of the Salinas Valley Chamber of Commerce. I have been the CEO for 5 years now, and this is the very first time that I'm coming to speak before your board. But I hope you hear not only my voice, but the voice of the nearly 700 members of the Chamber. That's businesses and a lot of nonprofits, and there are thousands and thousands of residents and people who work in the city. The executive board of the Chamber discussed this issue. We talked about what should be done and what the transportation agency's role is. While we have compassion for the homeless, through the Downtown Rotary, I'm helping raise funds. I was there a couple of times over this weekend. I've seen what the problems look like, but I have to comment that I agree with the gentleman's statements that this is the transportation agency and that this is a county issue. What the transportation agency should be looking at is how do you make that land available for its purpose. The reason you bought it was not a homeless shelter. Now the city signed on board with the county for 6 months and ponied the money to pay for that. But those cold months are over. Homelessness continues to be a problem. The county should be the one taking the leadership. I understand there's some buildings that the county has near Natividad Hospital which possibly could be used for this. But this is not a long-term solution. This is continuing a patch on it. And it is not the role of the transportation agency to be the landlords to solve this problem. Let's talk about some long-term solutions. The city of Salinas, the city's city manager, Ray Corpus, I met with him this morning. He went with the CAO of the county, Lou Bauman. They went to San Francisco to look at a project over there, which is called the Navigator Project, which has wraparound services, and they agree that's the direction that we should be moving in. It needs to be funded. The city's willing to work on that, but if they spend another $180,000, $240,000 for another 6 months, in the opinion of the city manager, that's just wasting that money instead of looking at a long-term solution. So what the Chamber's position is, we want economic development. We want those businesses to thrive. I have to tell you, when Supervisor Alejo says that there's no crime problems, did you see the letter from the first mayor's house saying that their staff is picking up syringes in the ground before school children come? I've heard business owners tell me about scraping off black tar heroin off of the sidewalk. Now, admittedly, most of the people who stay at the shelter are probably good people, but we have to understand that there comes a negative element with it as well. So again, I would encourage you not to extend this, to look for another long-term solution, and thank you for your time.
Good morning, I'm Frank Saunders. I'm a member of the Salinas City Center Assessment District. I'm also a downtown property owner. I've been for over 30 years. I've been in the area for over 30 years, so I know this problem as well as anybody here. After forming this assessment district, we have began to clean up the downtown as much as we could. We have spent a lot of money on security, a lot of money on beautification, landscaping, keeping the sidewalks and gutters clean. Basically, trying to improve the overall image of downtown Salinas. They came to us, I believe we heard about this back in November, if the shelter was going to come into play. And we were vehemently opposed to it at that time. We were asked by the mayor and others to stand down, that it was only going to be a short-term use. And at the end of April, this was done. We would no longer have a homeless shelter in that area. And here we are. I expected this. Northeast Place in Chinatown was expected to be a temporary use. A lot of other homeless uses in the area were supposedly temporary. They tend to go on and on and on. I have a lot of empathy for the homeless. Believe me, I want to see money spent properly with a long-term solution as opposed to these temporary short-term fixes. Some of the comments that you heard regarding how this facility is managed are true. I have witnessed them personally. I've witnessed what I consider to be drug deals going down in the back parking lot, right next to the garbage containers area. There is trash on this site constantly. I was there yesterday. There were bottles of liquor around the trash enclosure, the papers and litter scattered everywhere. The people use the back area. There are people that come in and park back there, and I don't know what sort of activities are going on, but believe me, they're not related to homeless shelter operations. We're doing the best we can in the old town to improve our image. I should say the city center, because we've changed the name to Salinas City Center. This shelter has now become somewhat of a midpoint between Chinatown and the Methodist Church on the corner of San Luis and Salinas Street. The homeless periodically are going back and forth. Some of them are good people, obviously. There are a lot of good homeless people. But there's also the criminal element that seems to show up in the same areas. And that's what we're particularly concerned about. As far as the homeless problem being taken care of, I pay a maintenance man to come in at 6:30 every morning to go through my buildings. And I would say 3 or 4 times a week, he's kicking people out of the alcoves in our buildings. He's cleaning up urine in the doorways, feces around the back parking lots. This is not cool for our image. And I ask all of you, because you represent a lot of cities around here, ask yourself, if somebody wanted to put a homeless shelter in a main artery into your city, where over 100,000 cars go by every day, would you be comfortable with it? Yes. How about Ocean Avenue, Carmel? How about Reservation and Marina? How about coming into Monterey on Mondays? Would you want to see that? If the answer to that is no, then you have to say no to this. Thank you.
You are a patient group. Thanks for your patience today and listening to everybody. My name is Ken Steen. I'm the district manager of the Salinas City Improvement Association, which is an owner-based association. We fund ourselves, we assess ourselves as property owners. I'm sorry you had to listen to this issue today because Tansey's not really responsible for the extension of that lease, but you have my letter that's representative of the association and our opposition to the extension. And one reason we are saying that, and I've set forth that in the letter, is that there are better solutions. And I won't go through that. Everybody's brought it up already. But I do appreciate the fact that people are looking at some better solutions. I've been authorized by Bruce Taylor to voice his opposition to the extension. Bruce is obviously one of the biggest property owners in downtown, and we really appreciate his support. I wanted to mention, not necessarily Mayor Delgado, but as far as security, our private security runs $10,000 a month. That's private security, that's not Salinas PD. Separately, we spend $12,000 a month in maintaining the streets, sidewalks, etc., etc. I just want to pass that along to you. And finally, I'd like to thank the city of Salinas, mayor, council, and the folks at City Hall for taking a leadership role in providing this shelter. While it's served its purpose, it's time to move on. Thank you.
I definitely would consider that an amendment to what Supervisor Phillips had just said, to find a middle ground between all the way from December from 2 months. 30-day extension, drop dead extension, no more extensions afterwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Board of Supervisors. I appreciate the fact that we have enthusiasm for taking care of our most needy people. We've been doing this a lot longer than I would have imagined after I became mayor. And we've spent a lot of the taxpayers' money. Foolish or otherwise, I've heard all kinds of comments. We've done a horrible job. We're addressing an issue that's well above any city or county's ability to take care of. People in Washington that aren't talking to each other, Sacramento, who is a nice, fine group of people, have left us with this job. And today, it makes me very happy, and I appreciate Luis Alejo and his enthusiasm for dragging us all out to Natividad Road, and John for the gentleman on North Main, when we've gone out and we've looked at all these facilities. But somewhere down the road, we've forgotten one issue. Rapid rehousing is really the answer. We have the Housing Resource Center that sometimes we forget about as we look at doing this. We in the city believe we need a 2-year temporary place until we build something permanent, such as the Navigation Center in the city or these other facilities where they actually bring in all of the resources and the services. That's really what we've got to do, whether it be at 321 North Main or it be on Natividad Road. What shocks me is when I hear that we own some trailers and we're going to bring them out there and it's going to cost me $1.6 million to get them downtown out to Natividad Road. Whoever we're doing business with, we should stop. They're obviously not a local company that wants to keep the money local. But I think that's something we've got to do. We've got to figure out how to open this shelter. And I'm sure we can work out the permitting process. But I hate to see us commit to a facility for 3 to 5 years, knowing that in 3 to 5 years, some of us may not be in our positions. And 5 years from now, there'll be the same subjects talking about having a warming shelter at 321 North Main. That's not the answer. The answer is we need something permanent. We need to do it right. We need to make the bathrooms right. North Main's got some bathroom issues that handicapped people are going to have to go out in the back parking lot. We need to do this, and we need to step up. And we in the city of Salinas are willing to work with you. Yes, we're under the time crunch. You're gone in August. We are currently on recess from council meetings. Not that I couldn't call them all back for emergency council meetings if it became necessary. We will work with you on the emergency permit process on whatever facility, and we will all work together to make this happen. But I think we need to understand that our nonprofits can't handle the load they currently have. We've increased our homeless population by 57%. Monterey has reduced theirs by about 35%, so that gives you a clue where maybe they came from. But we need to not have it just here. And I'll be quick here. The Monterey County Mayors Association has asked the Mayor of King City, the Mayor of Gonzales, myself, and the Mayor of Seaside to step up and work with the Homeless Coalition and to see that we start moving forward at a little rapider pace, because we have more people now. And I want to thank Elliott and his Housing Resource Center for taking the families and getting them into housing. They've already done that, and we certainly appreciate that. We know we have more work ahead of us before November comes, but we think there's an opportunity here, and we're hoping that 13, the Natividad Road address is our preferred one, because we think that's where the opportunity is and the services are.
Well, Madam Chair, and I guess the ad hoc folks that were looking at Supervisor Alejo and our different nods. Supervisor Alejo, you heard what Supervisor Phillips has indicated. I mean, But to the staff also, so if we don't go with this emergency shelter on North Main Street, what happens to those 50 individuals, persons that we were, under, I thought, under time is of the essence to find a facility before winter hits? So what would happen if we delay this? And frankly, I'm concerned and disappointed with the city, because I thought we were working together on it. I thought initially, I don't know what got to them, what political pressure they were under to change their mind. Because we were clear, we're going to use this facility for 2 years. This will give us 2 years to quickly galvanize, get the community foundation, get everybody to give us the resources to do the capital projects at 1221. That was my understanding. Other than that, I don't know. The city had the women's club that they don't use anymore. So I'm just disappointed they're not even here so that I could hear from them and ask them, what is your alternative then? If you don't want the North Main Street, where do you want us to send this individual? And so at this point, I'm kind of hesitant to say no because we still need to deal with this. This isn't going away. I haven't heard from them because we pick another site for an emergency shelter, then they feel some pressure, they're going to change their mind because it's always the same, not here. Everybody wants us to do something about it, but not in my backyard. And so that would be my question, and I don't know, Supervisor Levitt, if you still think that we can continue with this, and you'll certainly continue talking to the city about this. But I have a major concern that, again, we're down here to the last minute, the sister place where we had them. The city was adamant, we don't want them there. And so I don't know what went on, what transpired, but this is frankly disappointing that we're dealing with very critical issues, and we've got to make decisions now, not tomorrow or 2 weeks from now.
Through the chair, if I can respond, I mean, what the city, presents in their letter to the board is pursuing rapid rehousing programs, housing navigation, and street outreach. And currently, the county, we have a $1 million project annually of Housing Resource Center to provide rapid rehousing. And just to give it context, through that contract, we are able to place about 8 families, it's only for families. We're able to place about 8 families a month in housing. It typically leads to permanent housing, particularly when we can access the housing authority's vouchers and continue services. But the big challenge is finding housing, which I know in past times when I've been up here talking about the homeless issue, that is one of the biggest challenges, finding housing. So we have that contract in place, but to expand it, and even now when we get grants, we have grant opportunities, we have to think twice, are we able to find the housing? Because we don't want to get a grant and then not be able to use it. So that's the biggest challenge. So when you ask what happens, the city is proposing rapid rehousing, which is a best practice. But when inclement weather comes, having a safe place for families, a place that is open to families and single individuals, where it doesn't have to be triaged, is something that the Coalition of Homeless Services Providers, as they're managing the CARS system, says is extraordinarily valuable because you don't have homeless people with limited transportation moving around. So I guess in essence, when you say, well, what happens without this? We don't have that expanded emergency shelter process during inclement weather. With the exception of Victory Mission, we have an interim solution there. Dorothy's is open to discussion, but does not have a commitment to continue the expansion of homeless services for women. So there are challenges, and Victory Mission really is designed for single men. It's an extraordinarily valuable resource for single men, many of whom have challenges finding other placements because of their history. So that's there, but in the winter months, when you look at the scale of the homeless population, there are some, you need that extra resource, and that's what we're trying to address. So I'm not sure what the alternative is that the city's proposing.
I did want to point out, because this letter was sent to us, but when it was agendized, it wasn't properly placed on the agenda. To give the community notice that they were going to be taking a vote on a position on a shelter. County, none of us were invited to come address any concerns about the shelter. And I think all along we've tried to demonstrate an ability to work together. We've been very gracious in our comments towards the city. Just unfortunately, we weren't, our county and our staff were not afforded the same courtesy at the last meeting where this was discussed. But despite that, I think it's important for us to still express to the city that we're still willing to work together on the permanent side, that hopefully, if not today, that months down the road, they could join in with this on this temporary site. And we are, in their letter, they expressed some concerns with the site, that it's only limited to 50, or the expense. But I did want to tell the public these conditions that are being placed, some of the conditions are conditions that were placed on the Tansy site, and that's why the expense is greater. Because of their opposition, we're pursuing a type A permit from the city, because that's non-discretionary. Under state law and under the ordinance, it is by right. If we pursue a type B, which we hope to do in the future, type A, we want you to get this up and running, so we could at least serve those 50 people. And we know the need is there because our last shelter maxed out almost every night at 70 people. But the type D would allow us to be able to use that facility and serve more people. And then it was mentioned in the letter that the services aren't there because, and that's because we can only have services there and use throughout the day under a type B license. And so it's the same barriers that are causing us to be able to limit what we want to do, the possibility of doing that. Otherwise, it could be much more effective with more services and serve more people.
Thank you, Supervisor Lejo. Supervisor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate all the comments so far, and I want to thank staff and community members and board members who've been really working on this. And as I well know, the staff at the Department of Social Services and others have been working very hard and creatively on many fronts of the homelessness issue. So this is, just one. I do appreciate Supervisor Phillips's comments and concerns. I too really prefer the idea of investing in our own property, in our own building. But the fact is that what the staff has come up with is a more reasonable cost and a more reasonable timeline for what we're trying to do, at least reasonable cost for the improvements. I imagine running the thing will, the cost would be more or less equivalent. So I think this is the right option for today. As it relates to rapid rehousing and permanent housing, safe parking for vehicles, we need everything in this county. We need to meet people where they are and then get them the supports that they're ready for, and the fact is that moving them into housing is the most challenging thing in our county because we don't have enough units. And that's why I'm hopeful that when we are looking at our 1220 dividend, that we look at not just a shelter, but some possibility for some more permanent housing, longer term transitions or whatever, because it's not a problem that's going to disappear unless we start working on it. I do feel some concern and disappointment that we're not in partnership with the city of Salinas on this, and I certainly hope that they will find a way to chip in, because it's not any one entity's problem. It's our situation as a community, and we all need to participate together in a thoughtful, compassionate set of responses.
Thank you, Supervisor Parker. I just am so unsettled about this, I can't even tell you. I'm really saddened that the city isn't here. It's just absolutely obvious in their absence that this is not what they are supporting. And what I'm worried about, I'm just keep blathering all my thoughts out here, I'm worried that if we do go to Main Street, that the next step is going to be that they're going to be resistant and making it very difficult for us to get the permits that we're going to need to have to be able to move forward. And the thing that bothers me more than anything else about this is that we're sitting here struggling with this, and I am fearful that we are putting it on the backs of the homeless people, and that's not right. We've got to be able to find a solution to this. We simply have to. Elliot, I've worked with you forever. I know we're number one, that you're a magic man. We come up with solutions that have been amazing to me, working together in lots of senses. And I know how hard you have worked on this. I don't want to discount that, but I just don't feel like this is the right solution. I feel so troubled by this. I'm conscious of the fact that we've got 50 people, 50 families that are going to need housing very, very, very soon. I'm just so fearful that the city of Salinas is not going to allow us to move forward at the location. I don't know what we can do to jumpstart Natividad. I think that is going to be the right spot for us from everything that I've seen and everything that I've heard about, plus it's ours. We're investing in our property, which I really like a lot better. I'm not supportive of putting cannabis money into this project. I feel like It just irritates me more than anything else. As we sit here still struggling with our own cannabis ordinance, the city of Salinas is sending out permits, night and day. Talk about the place that the cannabis money ought to be flowing into. They should use cannabis money to put into this project.
Just in response, one of the thoughts I do have, because I think that the precedent issue that Supervisor Phillips raised is a complex issue. Revenue, no matter which direction we move, be it the permanent shelter or the appropriation with revenue behind it, be it the permanent shelter or the temporary shelter, the increment is $400,000. The operational costs will be pretty similar either way, but one of the opportunities I think we have is to continue to work with the city on building the shelter from that type A limited service 50 per night to something larger, because one of the things that the city does express, and I think that is a very shared concern between both the city and the county, is that we have more services built into the shelter program for housing navigation, for case management, for helping people access resources rather than just an overnight place to stay. Now, we will have some of those services built in, but not as extensive as an ideal type B shelter that has, more robust day programming, more robust resources that can come with a larger population who's accessing the shelter. So one of the opportunities that I think we would have moving forward is to work with the city around the expansion of the shelter and perhaps see where we can get some financial commitment there, because, again, I think the precedent that Supervisor Phillips raised is very complex as we look at a multi-jurisdictional issue where truly every jurisdiction has to step up to the plate, whether the homeless are located in their jurisdiction or whether they're not located in their jurisdiction. It really is a shared problem when you look at the increasing cost of housing and the challenge that so many young people, young families, older people have with paying for rent.
Do you think that a week would give us any fresh opportunities? Think the Tansy building is a possibility?
I doubt it's a possibility. I don't know what we could accomplish in a week in all candor. Certainly, our commitment will be to do everything we can, but it's unclear what we could accomplish in a week. Because the challenge gets to be location. And what I have heard officials from the city say is, bring portables out to 1220 Natividad. And the challenges for portables at 1220 Natividad run from the cost, which is a greater cost, to the challenge of developing around portables. I think we've all seen portables go up and stay there for a long time. And when you think about programming in portables, if you think about the neighborhood concerns that come up, my personal recommendation is that there'd be pretty big challenges if we went down that path. And that is the path that we've heard from the city. I don't know if they have any other locations. We've heard talk of it, but we haven't heard any actual locations come forward.
Yes.
Just on the point of what other alternatives are there, the only other thing I've heard very briefly was doing what we're already doing now after they closed the temporary shelter at Tamsy, which is the expanded services at Dorothy's Place and Victory Mission. But for obvious reasons, we all know that when you speak to members who are homeless, members of the community who are homeless, there's issues with that, right? Because there's sometimes many do not go there regardless because they feel it's unsafe. There's issues with registered sex offenders, 209s, and so issues of children being in Chinatown become a real issue. But I recently heard that there was some interest in expanding services where children could be in Chinatown, where for all my conversations with providers and community residents, that's a real safety concern for children being there because of the safety issues and because of the registered sex offenders who utilize some of those services in Chinatown. So these issues are very complex, and that's why we were trying to find a site outside of Chinatown that homeless residents could feel safer around, and that I think the last shelter demonstrated that it worked well.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. Dr. Bellman, and let it when you read it.
So this is certainly a very difficult situation, and I understand the mayor and some council members are up at the League of Cities that starts tomorrow and will go through Friday. So
All American
some
cities
options would be to, of course, approve it today. Alternatively, you can direct staff to put it on consent for next week with an attempt to have a conference call with the mayor. And I could work with Ray Corpus to arrange that. And alternatively, some off-the-cuff ideas were abandoning the public defender trailers right across the street. And we could expedite that move and consider using that facility there. And then I believe, Elliot, the cost of this is about $1.5 million per year, is that correct? The services.
When you bring, hang on, let me find the board report there, I didn't have there, but when you add the services and the, or the operations and the lease, it comes up to between 1.1 million and 1.1 million and 350,000 counting 2018.
So
But the bulk of that cost is the operational cost for finish up.
for the service, so about $60 per resident per day, so that's a significant cost for that operation. So that another alternative would be to work with Dorothy's and also get learner vouchers for females and families. So there's a number of options before you vote today.
Madam Chair, I'd be supportive of doing, put it in contingency, contingent on consent, as you indicated, because it'll give us a weekend, and that's a good idea, because that's been brought up before in terms of the portable system, public phone, we own it, and that's certainly good, but at least we'll give them a week to think about it. You know, certainly nobody wants to have a deteriorating relationship with the city. It's important, we got to get back and work with them and talk to them, so I'd be willing to say, put it on consent next week, and then they'll have this week out of courtesy, because maybe they are out there. And see what they can come up with, or what they're willing to support or not. That's the goal. We've made a decision. I think they'll understand that there's strong support for the North Main Street site.
So,
With that, then, Madam Chair, then I'll withdraw my motion, and we'll move that we agree to put this on next week's consent agenda, and in the meantime, we will do last effort to reach out to the city of Salinas, Mayor Gunter, and Ray Corpus, and as part of a good faith effort to try to reach an agreement and try to solve it. I think it's a good time to put other alternatives such as the public defender's office, which is the old public defender's office, portable buildings. That's another possible site and probably less expensive, but it has its concerns, I'm sure, by the community as well. But I think when you put other options out there, perhaps it might spur people to think that maybe what we've been talking about is perhaps the better side of the two. But I think it's good to put that out there at this moment in time, because I think it is an option we can seriously consider.
I'll second that.
so, very good. So we have the motion on the floor to essentially put it on consent for next week, giving us a week to see what we can come up with. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Bellman.